Actually, I guess before we do that short question, I've just got to say that this equation, I equals R plus pi E, that's the Fisher equation. The link between real and nominal interest rates. I guess we need to know that now. Okay, let me test you with short question number 8. So that says, the Shulevit cost of anticipated inflation suggests the optimal inflation rate is negative. So what's the Shulevit cost? So what do we mean by Shulevit cost? It would be something like you go to the ATM a lot. You make a lot of trips during the month to go to the ATM to withdraw cash. Why would you do that? Well, that sort of suggests that you don't like just going once, drawing out a huge amount of cash, and holding on to that huge amount of cash during the month. Now, there might be lots of reasons why you don't want to have a huge amount of cash in your wallet during the month. You don't want someone to steal your wallet and lose a lot of money. But if you think about the Baumol-Tobin model of money demand, there's also another reason why you might not want to have a large amount of cash in your wallet. What's that? You're missing out on interest. So a Shulevit cost is a cost that you pay to avoid missing out on interest. In other words, a cost you pay because money is not a good store of value. So it could be, an example would be frequent trips to the ATM, wear out your shoes, or perhaps more realistically, just waste time that you could be using for other things. Frequent trips to the ATM. Why do you do this? Because money is a poor store of value. Of course, the fact that it's a poor store of value means relative to other assets. If it was just if every asset was a poor store of value, going to the ATM more often wouldn't make any difference. The idea is if you go to the ATM a lot, you can keep a lot of money, say, in a savings account and earn interest, as opposed to just having it in your wallet as cash and not earning interest. So relative to other assets. E.g. a savings account. Or bonds. Think of a savings account as like what we mean by bonds in macroeconomics. Buying bonds. Okay, so the claim is that these Shulevit costs, if the problem is avoiding, if you want to have monetary policy avoid this problem of Shulevit costs, what should monetary policy do? What would be a good inflation rate to aim for if you don't want to have this problem? You might think that in most countries this problem is so trivial that we shouldn't even be wasting time thinking about it. But if you had higher inflation, this might be an issue. So for this question, you need to sort of put aside your doubts. This question isn't even remotely important to an economy like Singapore. You've got to take the question as it is, and the question is asking you, if you want to avoid shoe leather costs, and you're the central bank, what inflation rate should you aim for? Of course, there might be all kinds of reasons why you might aim for one inflation rate or another inflation rate, but you've got to focus when you answer a question. Here the question is, what do shoe leather costs have to say about what the optimal inflation rate is? The claim is it's negative. So let's think quickly about that. So let's think about money demand. So think of the Balmont-Tobin model, for instance. I'm not going to go through it, but this is a good model to have in your mind when you're thinking about this question. The shoe leather cost is very much like the transaction cost that you see in the Balmont-Tobin model. Balmont-Tobin will give you a money demand function. That's the point of it. It looks very much like, you can check it, it looks very much like the one I drew, like that. Where are you paying a lot of shoe leather costs? Which points on the money demand function are shoe leather costs very high? Is it at the left or the right? At the left, because at the left you're holding on to a really tiny amount of money. However, you've still got to spend, you've still got to buy things every day. That means you've got to go to the ATMs very often. You don't have much cash in your wallet on average. At the right, you have a huge amount of cash in your wallet, so given the amount you're spending, you don't need to go to the ATMs very often. So this end of money demand is high shoe leather costs, or transaction costs as they're called in the Balmont-Tobin model. The upper end is low shoe leather costs. So we're going to think, what does this have to say about anticipated inflation? So if inflation is anticipated, that means it's expected. So we're going to look at cases where expected inflation is equal to actual inflation. So we want to know what inflation rate gives us low shoe leather costs, or lowest shoe leather costs. That's the question. I'm writing down a Fisher equation as well, which we'll need in this question. So we have that we're talking just about anticipated inflation, expected actual inflation equal to expected inflation. Fisher equation links nominal, real, expected inflation equal to actual inflation here. We have a diagram linking nominal interest rates, money demand, but there's also a connection with shoe leather costs. So I'm going to leave you to think about this over the lunch break. What inflation rate would we want if you want to get the shoe leather costs down as low as possible? Is that inflation rate negative? That was what the question was claiming. It's negative. Do you agree with that statement? Think about it over the lunch break. We'll resume at 5 past 1.